Hi guys, welcome to our channel. Today, we want to talk about a movie in which a young man and his sister in an isolated motel suffer from the pranks played on them one night, and they don't know what terrible fate awaits them. The movie's story will shock you, so stay tuned until the end. Check the title of the movie in the description.
You should know by now, Rachel.
At the movie's beginning, a young man named Larry Adams is driving. At the same time, with a fake account called Programming Flaw, on Facebook and Twitter, he makes obscene comments to people. He is doing this out of jealousy. A few hours later, his sister Rachel calls him and says that their parents understand how difficult the upcoming event can be for him, and that they are waiting for him at the hotel. Still, Larry insists that he just wants to see her. He says he has already reserved a motel called Pink and will wait for her there. After that, Larry arrives at the motel he had booked in advance. Since no one is in the office, he hears the conversation between two people and follows the voices to the motel bar. There, he sees the bartender, Chester, and another motel customer, Gerald, who initially stares at him with a certain seriousness. Chester tells him his pants are unzipped, but it's all just a joke.
How can I help you?
He opens a drink for him, and they get to know each other. It is clear from Larry's behavior that he is very obsessed. Chester informs him that he is here on behalf of the motel owners, a kind older man, and his wife, and then explains that he has to pay $75 for the rent. Larry gives him this amount, and then when they want to have a drink together, he refuses to drink because of his obsession. Gerald leaves, and after a short conversation with Chester about marriage, Larry admits that he doesn't want to get married. He says he's tired and asks him to give him the key to his room. Chester says he needs his credit card to pay the rent before he gives him the key. Larry is shocked and says that he gave him $75 just a few moments ago and asks him to check his pants pockets, but Chester still insists that the procedure is that he should give him his credit card. Larry gets angry and says that he will call the police. Suddenly Chester laughs and says he was joking with him, and then he gives him the key. After Larry enters his room, he starts cleaning obsessively, changing his pillows and bed sheets. When lying on the bed with his laptop, he makes a bad comment on the Pink Motel page with the Programming Flaw account, which makes him happy. After that, he goes to the Facebook page of his ex-girlfriend Cindy, who will marry a man soon, and jealously sees people's congratulatory comments under her post. He starts masturbating with one of her photos while there is a camera above the room that is watching him. When he washes his hands in the bathroom, he sees Chester's friend request on his Facebook. Still, he doesn't respond at the moment, and when he comes out, he sees the news of a chain accident on the road on TV, so he gets worried and calls his sister, but he doesn't get an answer. He calls Chester and informs him that his sister is supposed to join him. He asks if he has received a call or anything from her. Chester needs some time to check this matter, and after a few moments, he informs him that he has bad news for him. He says that his sister can never come again, but it still seems that he was fucking with him and joking with him. Larry can't believe it and gets shocked and angry that he was ridiculed. After that, he plans to drink, but it doesn't work. Suddenly Gerald appears and gives him a drink with a strong blow. He seems angry, considers himself a wolf, and blames Larry for touching him, which bothers him a little. Larry takes a deep breath after he leaves and clears his drink. He then texts his sister, "Where are you?" and looks worried about Rachel being unavailable. When he returns to his room, he finds an envelope in front of the door with a picture of a man's penis inside, and he gets nervous because he is sure that this joke is by Chester.
Ha ha ha! Very funny, Chester.
He continues to make bad comments about Cindy's posts, which makes him happy. Later, when Larry is taking a shower, he notices that someone entered his room and thinks it's his sister, but it's actually Chester. He informs him that the door to the bathroom is broken, which he forgot to inform him before. Larry thinks it's another joke, but Chester says it's not and he will help him out of the bathroom, so he asks him to push the door with all his might. When he does this, Chester releases the door, and Larry falls to the ground, and it turns out that he is still fucking with him. Chester laughs, but Larry is furious and scolds him, saying, "No one thinks you're funny."
You are pathetic. Do you know that? Nobody likes people like you. You never get the hint. You just push and you push and you push and you push. Well, let me tell you something. Nobody thinks that you're funny.
Now Chester asks him very seriously to tell him a joke. After Chester leaves the room, Larry sends a message to his sister and explains while packing his things that the place he is in is weird, and he has to leave this motel. He then asks her to call him as soon as she receives the message. When he is about to get into his car, Chester suddenly appears, scares him, and apologizes for his behavior. However, Larry still wants to leave, so he returns the room keys to him. Chester also promises that he will inform him if he hears about Rachel. When he gets in the car while texting his sister, he realizes that he never told Chester his sister's name, so he gets suspicious and thinks that maybe his sister's disappearance has something to do with Chester. He calls the police, informs them about this, and asks them to immediately send an officer there. When the sheriff arrives, Larry informs him about his sister's disappearance, and that Chester knew her name. At the same time, Chester believes he had told him his sister's name before and forgot it. He thinks it's stupid to inform the police about this issue, and then the sheriff takes him to a corner to talk to him about it. Larry secretly looks at them and sees that they are laughing together, so he decides to search the motel office on his own to maybe find a trace of his sister's name there. As soon as he finds proof of his sister Rachel's name, he shows it to the sheriff, and Chester, to his surprise, punches himself in the face to make Larry the culprit of the conflict. The sheriff believes Chester's trick and arrests Larry, while Rachel arrives and is shocked to see her brother in this state. Chester tells the sheriff he has no complaints and asks him to let him go, and Rachel and Larry hug each other. She tells him that the reason for her late arrival was an accident on the road, which forced her to come from a side route, and because of the lack of an antenna, the texts she was sending could not be received. The sheriff warns that he will arrest them if something happens again and then leave. On the other hand, Chester explains the events to Rachel and says that his brother is very worried about him. When Rachel finds out, she explains to Larry that she made an online reservation. Maybe Chester probably knew her name because of that. Finally, Chester asks him to forget everything and return to his room. He hugs him apologetically. He also tells Rachel he will give her a free room because she is beautiful. After they get to know each other, Rachel goes to her brother's room and tries to calm him down. Larry says that the upcoming bride is on his nerves. They laugh a little and joke with each other about the pornographic photo Chester sent him. At that moment, there is a knock on the room door, and Larry realizes that Chester is behind the door. He is forced to open the door against his will and Rachel's insistence. He brings them 2 cocktails to apologize, and when Larry sees his goodwill, he suggests they have a drink together. Chester accepts their offer, and they drink together by the pool. Rachel shows him the photo of her dog and says that she had to part with him, and he doesn't stop his tasteless jokes like always. After some conversation, Rachel reveals that Larry was a happy boy as a child, and everyone loved him. She tells Chester what's your story, and he says he has no story except laughing, drinking and making cocktails. Yet he says he has never done anything wrong. Sometime later, Rachel falls asleep, and Larry and Chester continue to drink. He tells him that it is obvious that his condition is not very good, and he asks him why. Larry says it is about his ex-girlfriend Cindy and sadly says that the day before he was going to propose to her, she left him indifferently. He admits that after she left him, he wrote a note to end all this, but he didn't have the guts to give the letter. Now he plans to do it by tomorrow. Chester asks him to allow him to read the letter after making him emotional. He insistently takes the letter from him and starts reading it. He is affected by Larry's emotional words, sheds tears, and says that this letter will definitely affect her tomorrow. Rachel wakes up, Chester asks them to take a selfie before they leave, and Larry asks him to keep a secret about this. After this incident, he accepts Chester's friend request on Facebook and sleeps while the camera watches him. In the middle of the night, Larry suddenly wakes up from someone's noise outside the room. When he opens the door, he realizes that someone has painted an insulting picture on Gerald's motorcycle, and he is very angry. Rachel joins him, and after that, it becomes clear that this was another joke Chester had made with Gerald, so this angers him to the extent that he gets into a fight with him. Gerald beats him and throws him to the ground. Still, in a surprise this time, Chester attacks him and knocks him out, and to his horror, without Larry and Rachel realizing, he stabs his knife into his ear and kills him. He pretends that he accidentally killed him in the fight, and Rachel says they should call the police. He stops her and says that I will do it myself and asks them to bring him some vodka. Then he calls the police and reports the murder of someone in the pink motel. Rachel doesn't believe his call, and when they go to the bar, she calls the police again and realizes that his call to the police was real. Suddenly they see the bodies of the owners of this motel there, and they are terrified. At this moment, Chester suddenly appears and starts explaining their deaths. He says that Johnny has been monitoring the passengers of this motel for years with the cameras, and he enjoys this until his wife finds out about this and realizes that he has been cheating on her all this time. As a result, they get into a conflict and kill each other, but it is unclear to what extent Chester tells this story is true. He asks them if they believe him, and Rachel immediately approves, and pours 3 shots of vodka for them to drink together. She uses this opportunity and hits Chester in the head with a vodka bottle, and he faints. Then they run away, but she realizes they lost their car keys. They search the room to find the keys. Suddenly, they see Chester behind the window, holding the keys and giving them a scary smile. Larry locks the room, and a few seconds later, the sheriff arrives, and they go out to tell him the story. The sheriff doesn't believe them and asks them to lie on the floor while Rachel explains that she was the one who called. Chester appears and tells the sheriff that they hit him in the head and convinces him to handcuff them. Larry gets up angrily, and the sheriff stops him with a shocker. Suddenly Chester smiles like a madman, chokes the sheriff in surprise, and watches him die. It turns out that he is a serial killer and starts torturing and harassing Larry and Rachel. He destroys them psychologically like a psychopath, and to their surprise, he opens her hands and gives them the car keys to run away. As soon as Rachel turns on the car, she starts driving, but the car stops a little further away, and it becomes clear that this was another trick by Chester. He starts laughing like a psycho and brutally knocks both of them unconscious with anesthetic gas. Larry wakes up in a confused and paralyzed state in the middle of the pool and sees Chester, who has put the dead people on chairs around the pool and has organized a party for himself like a patient. He injected him with so much ayahuasca that he doesn't even recognize himself. When he asks about Rachel, he says that she's in the bathroom showering. He decides to take Larry to her, humiliates him along the way, and asks him to confess and show who he really is. He takes him into the room, puts him on the bed, and starts recording the video before he confesses. Larry humbly admits that despite his appearance, his heart is full of hatred and bitterness. As a child, he didn't even know how to behave with his peers, so he came up with the idea to create programming flaw.
Sounds like a hell of a guy.
I could be free. He's formidable. He's everything that I'm not. Rachel aside. And he's the only one who ever had my back.
They hug, and Chester admires him. Then it is revealed that he brutally murdered Rachel in the bathroom. Desperate and humiliated, Larry falls to the ground and cries. Chester informs him that he has published the confession and letter to Cindy. He reads the comments that people write to him individually to torment him. He reads Cindy's comment. "You are a monster, and I will never like you." After a few moments, Larry changes his mood and starts laughing, surprising Chester. He starts complimenting Chester, believing that what he did tonight was smart, and it is clear that he is becoming incredibly like him. Chester decides to kill him and asks him to tell his last wish before he dies, and the only thing Larry says is that he does not want to be killed in this room. He laughs and says that he would like to be killed at Cindy's wedding along with Rachel, and he convinces him anyway by acting like him. Early in the morning they put Rachel's body in the back seat of her car and started driving. While Larry drives along the way, he starts telling a silly story comparing Chester to Rachel's dog. He explained that Rachel was very attached to her dog, so she had to change her car because of her dog. Gradually Larry increases the speed of the car. As a punchline to his story, he informs Chester that Rachel disabled the airbags on one side of the car, where Chester is sitting. At the movie's end, he deliberately goes towards the wall at a high speed, and later, it turns out that Chester was killed in this fatal accident. Now, the police identify Larry as a serial killer and declare him wanted. Don't forget to like the video, and subscribe to our channel.